So my talk tonight is on how discontent and expectations cause us to suffer. The Buddha, well, I won't start with the Buddha. I'll start with a course I took in college called General Semantics. Any of you ever heard of it? It's a philosophy. It was developed in the early 1900s by a man named Alfred Korzybski. And from what I learned in the course, Mr. Korzybski was one of those people that you hear about in history who woke up in the middle of the night and he had all the answers. He understood everything. And he was so excited. And he started trying to scribble it down because he fell asleep. And when he woke up in the morning, he didn't remember any of it. And he spent the rest of his life trying to recapture his insight from that moment, from that night. So I love that story. I can just imagine. And it was a wonderful course. It was about language, semantics, and how they influence our thought. But one of the things I remember, here I'll share my screen because I wrote it down for you, was a what I call an emotional equation. And Korzybski said that happiness equals motivation over expectations. And I think that's very true, that the higher our expectations, the less happy we are. Whereas if we can be really motivated, especially if you think about a specific situation where you're trying to do something, if you're highly motivated, you're going to have a happier outcome because you're going to put a lot into it. It's going to, it's going to be joyful for you. Whereas if you're filled with expectations, and some of us, our expectations are so high, they could never be met. And that makes us unhappy. So I have this, I just wanted to mention this little book that Marcia Craighead, some of you know her, gave me. It's called Spiritual Equations. I told her this quote a long time ago, and she gave this equation, happiness equals motivation over expectations. And she gave me this book, which was really good, and it's just filled with all of these emotional equations. Here, another one that I've always liked is this one. Pain equals suffering times resistance. So, we all suffer. There's suffering in all of our lives, but it's the resistance to it that hurts. And if we stop resisting, if our resistance could go down to zero, then there's a way in which our pain can be really alleviated. So that quote came from Bhante Rahula, those of you who know him from that meditation center in West Virginia, the name of which is gone from my head. Okay, so the Buddha said, the Buddha was not interested in teaching fundamental truths about the origin of the universe or that sort of thing that many other religions, offer a whole belief system about things like that. But Buddhism doesn't. And the Buddha said, that's a waste of your time to think about that. He said, I teach suffering and the end of suffering. And that's all he taught, suffering and the end of suffering. So since I think expectations and discontent are two things that cause us a lot of suffering, I thought this would be a good topic for us tonight. One important message of Buddhism is that we create so much of our own pain through kind of endless cycle of desire and attachment. And of course, expectations are a kind of wanting, a kind of desire. They could be very small and so small that you may hardly notice them, and you may hardly notice the dampening effect, the letdown that you feel, or they may be huge. I expected to be friends forever, or they may be tiny. I thought the movie would be better. You know, that we have expectations and they cause suffering depending on their scope. So disappointment in our expectations can translate into hours of dissatisfaction, can make us impatient, tense, and we don't realize that we're suffering because our expectations haven't been realized. We expect things of ourselves, we expect things of others, and others expect things of us. Expectations can be high, they can be low, they can be negative. But through the practice of mindfulness, we can learn to free ourselves from expectations more and more, little by little. You know, we all strive somewhat in our lives. We want to have good relationships with those close to us. We want to be a good person who's careful in actions and words and deeds. We want to be a success in whatever we do. We want to behave right. We want to be treated right. We want to be a good meditator. There's nothing wrong with making efforts. But how do we make an effort and at the same time not be attached to the outcome? Sometimes it seems like the more effort I put into something, the more attached I get to the outcome. So there's a very kind of tricky balance between making an effort to have something come out well and not suffering when it doesn't work. So I think all of us have had, none of us have really lived up totally to our expectations. That's my guess. Expectations, as I said, are part of wanting mind, their desire. And they create an illusion of control in a world that is constantly changing and unfolds completely independently of our opinion of how it should all go. So what can we do? How can we free ourselves from this tyranny of expectation? Just coming back to the practice, we know that in meditation, you start with the present moment. That's all we really have, isn't it? And we use our minds and our presence to be with what is. And we try not to judge. Judgment, actually, if you think about it, is another form of expectation. One of the most tyrannical. Judgment says, this part of the present moment does not measure up. Or this part of the present moment measures up, which is not much better because you haven't been with the present moment in either case. So these are all my expectations. Me, 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 me. I could be in control. So instead of expectations, another way of going about things is looking for possibilities. The difference between having an expectation and looking for a possibility. Expectations are future-based. They require a certain result over which we have no control. They narrow our options, they limit our imagination, they blind us to the possible. They create a pressure. They kind of hold us hostage to a future that may or may not happen. So they cause us to react to any threat to that future that we've decided and believe we deserve. So when life is contingent on our expectations, it's impossible to be happy with just whatever the moment offers. Every moment has to be evaluated in terms of the expected future, and that's a kind of enslavement. But if we can look for possibilities, we're looking at the present moment. We are being present. And being present is the only place where you can really be alive. and feel the mystery of life and live fully in your values. You can have preferences about how you want the future to be, but you don't have to assume that they'll come to pass, and you don't demand that they come to pass because you understand the future's unknown. So we look for these possibilities and we make efforts. Being open to possibilities says you want what you think you want may change with time. Or there may be a different future that could bring you more or equal happiness to the one that you might have expected. You know, you might die before the future can unfold. So real joy is joy that is available to us right now, not in the future. You know, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the Saranaloka nuns at Aloka Vihara in Placerville, whose monastery has been threatened by the Calder fire. And they were putting things on their website earlier this week, that had such a beautiful tone of being with the possibilities and not with expectations. They knew they might lose their monastery. They knew they might lose everything that so many of them had worked so hard for years now. But you could feel in their writing that there was no sense that they deserved the monastery, they deserved the fire, to get through the fire. Instead, they were holding the possibility, but understanding that this was out of their control, out of their hands. It was really beautiful to read what they were writing. There was this teaching in just the way that they explained things. So there is just the news of the day about Aloka Vihara, those of you who are interested. I'll read you what was on the website today. We learned that the monastery's main Vihara building, the dorm workshop building, and the green yurt for meditation were all marked as undamaged by the fire. Great. We suspect the inspectors were not aware there was also a kuti, another yurt, and a trailer tucked into the forest. So we may not know if they are damaged or not until we return. Yeah.
Mary Helen, excuse me, this John Ashton over there now was...
Oh, he was a bad guy? Is he still there?
No.
Good. Sorry about that. I couldn't see him because I was recording.
Okay.
Thanks for telling me, Mark.
Yeah.
I was afraid of that. So anyway, being open to possibilities in life is like having an act of faith. Your well-being is not dependent on how things turn out. Your mind is open and inspired right now. Your imagination and your intuition are available, and you respond rather than react. This ability to respond to things rather than react, I think, is the main distinction between those who feel free and those who are caught up in the suffering of life. Are we reacting or are we responding? Do we have the choice to respond, or have we reacted and it's too late because we're caught up? So when we react, we're not opting for seeing the possibilities. We're opting for our expectations. And we get hurt, we get lost, we get angry, we suffer. So this is hard to deal with. We all have expectations. This is kind of a universal struggle, I think. And I think it's great to try to become mindful of it and expect to stumble and have it not be perfect right away, but great thing to start being more aware of. The other thing I wanted to talk about is discontent and the possibility of being contented. And, you know, I came across the phrase, now is the winter of our discontent. And so I just looked it up because I saw the play a long time ago, but I didn't really know what Richard III was talking about. And I was so surprised because the winter of our discontent means that our discontent is over and happy days are here again. So I never knew that. I always thought it was a very sad statement, but wrong. So anyway, discontent could easily be another word for suffering, couldn't it? And it can be obvious and strong discontent, or it can be subtle and below the surface. And we don't even realize we're discontent, but our worldview gets colored. So let's just talk about what we're discontent with. I mean, I'll tell you what I'm discontent with. I'm discontent with fire, air quality, politics. You want to add anything? Come on, now's your chance.
Unvaccinated people.
Oh, yes, unvaccinated people. What else? Does that sum it all up? I thought you'd have a longer list, but I'm sure you do, and you're just being shy, which is fine. Well, let me use the example of political situation as a way to approach our discontent with something. You know, there are just large groups of people out there with whom I disagree about how things should go in our country, and it can get so strong, and I can get too caught up in it, and I need to, you know, on a short-term basis, disengage, go for a walk, stop thinking about it. But a longer-term solution, I mean, let's just take people who are not vaccinated. I can get angry at them and feel like they are causing problems for everybody else and selfish. And I can give you a whole string of condemnations of this group of people. And when I do that, I'm suffering. When I get into that kind of state about any group that I disagree with or disapprove of, I'm suffering. Because I'm the one who's feeling the aversion. I'm the one who's feeling the anger. I'm the one, they don't know. Buddha said, when you condemn your enemy, you're doing him a great favor because you're suffering much more than he could ever make you suffer. Jack Kornfield told a story about he has a daughter who's an activist, and she talked him into, or she invited him to go on a march with her in San Francisco. And he is of something that he believed in. So he went on this political march, and he said he enjoyed it. He enjoyed the streets of San Francisco, the sunshine. He enjoyed the opportunity to express what he believed in. But he said that he saw, you know, both sides were there on either side of the street. He saw a lot of people suffering that day and not enjoying themselves at all because they were hating the other group. And he said, you know, that doesn't do any help for anybody. And it's really hard to try to ground our work for what we believe in, try to ground it in kindness and understanding, and not allow hatred for those who don't agree with us to be our driving force. It's very difficult. Can I condemn the act of not getting vaccinated without condemning the person who may be afraid, who may be, you know, has belief systems? Diane, did you want to say something?
You were talking about that, and you know, like last night we were out with our sign, no on the recall, and I've been doing a lot of that lately, and these people that come by that are so mad, they're like yelling nasty things, and they're flipping us off, and they're so angry and stuff, and then I just give them a little, I smile and I say thank you, and I give them a little peace sign, and this gal is standing next to me, you know, and she says, how are you able to do that? And I said, I think that pisses them off more than anything else.
Oh, you're bad.
I really do feel better after I do it though, because I am letting go. I'm not engaging in the hate. I'm not. And I am sincere here about, not
Yes.
engaging in the hate and
Right.
anger. And, so I'm not feeling it. I stay away from it. So that's the good part for me.
Good for
Whether
you.
or not it angers them, I'm not sure, but I'm sure it doesn't make them happy, but it makes me feel better.
I think it's a great way to put your Buddhist practice and your political beliefs in action at the same time together. So it's a good, very good practice. So, but one of the great ways to not be discontent is to practice contentment. And I learned this contentment practice, which I'd like to close my talk with this little 2 or 3 minute contentment practice, and then we can have a discussion. From Lee Brasington. Contentment, as Lee teaches it, is the third jhana. And I may have done this with you before. I know I've done it with groups before, but it won't hurt to do it again, because it's really nice to know how to experience contentment at any time. So that's what I want to guide you in. So if you could close your eyes and just follow along with me. Take a deep breath or two. Come into the present moment. Come into your body. Very aware, very mindful. And now I want you to think back of a single moment in your life when you were content. It may have been a special day, a holiday or an event, something that made you happy. Or it may have just been a small moment where you saw something or felt something and this sense arose from who knows where, but suddenly you were all one piece. You had everything you needed. You were completely present, completely relaxed, and you were content. So see if you can think of a time in your life, a moment in your life, and go back there. If you can't think of a moment, see if you can just go there. Go to that place of content. And while you're sitting in this lovely contentment, feel your body. There's a kind of a satisfaction that runs through your body. Contentment's such a peaceful feeling. It's not all that lively. It has kind of a beautiful weight to it. You can kind of sink into it. Just be quiet in the contentment and the gratitude for this beautiful, beautiful moment. Let this contentment fill your whole body. Let the lovely feeling fill your mind. Let it fill your heart. Nothing in the world needs to change. You really, truly are being with things as they are. Being happy with it. Thanks. I'm going to stop recording.